The Galactic Alliance's desperate gambit. In the Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Alliance, a tense silence hung in the air. Representatives from a dozen starfaring civilizations sat in a wide circle, their faces etched with worry and fatigue. At the center podium stood Admiral Zoran Vex, a tall, slender being with shimmering silver skin and piercing violet eyes. His voice was grave as he addressed the council. Esteemed members of the Alliance, we stand at a precipice. For centuries, we have fought the ruthless expansion of the Zephyr Empire, a fight that has consumed countless lives and drained our resources. Despite our advanced technologies and combined might, we are losing ground with each passing year. Murmurs of discontent rippled through the chamber. The war against the Zephyr had been a constant backdrop for generations, a seemingly inescapable quagmire. Admiral Vex raised a hand for silence. But there is hope. Our long-range scouts have discovered a new species, one just taking its first steps into the stars. They call themselves humans. An image flickered to life above the central holoprojector. It showed a bipedal creature with smooth skin in various shades of brown and a shock of hair atop its head. It wore a form-fitting suit of primitive armor, carrying a clunky-looking kinetic rifle. Technologically, they are centuries behind us, Vex continued. But our analysts have studied their history and culture. This is a species defined by adaptability, ingenuity, and sheer tenacity. Time and again, they have faced existential threats and emerged stronger for it. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices. "You cannot be serious," exclaimed Ambassador Trigon of the Celesti Dominion, "entrusting our fate to primitives. It's absurd. We have no choice," Admiral Vex said firmly. "Our projections are clear. Without a new variable in this war, the Zephyr will overwhelm us within a decade. These humans may be the key to our survival." Slowly, reluctantly, the Council voted. The resolution passed by the narrowest of margins. The die was cast. On Earth, in the year 2187, the message came without warning. Across every screen and broadcast, an image of an alien face, regal and imperious. In a voice that resonated with power, it spoke. "People of Earth, you stand on the threshold of a larger universe, a universe of wonders and terrors, of opportunity and strife. We are the Galactic Alliance, and we have need of your strength." In the days that followed, stunned human leaders were brought before the Alliance Council. The Galactic Alliance laid out the situation in stark terms. The war against the Zephyr Empire, the desperate need for new strategies and fresh thinking, the potential for humans to be the deciding factor. Some human leaders balked at being thrust into a galactic conflict they had no part in starting. But others saw opportunity, a chance to leap forward centuries in technology, to forge a place for humanity among the stars. In the end, the decision was made. Humanity would join the war. In secret training facilities across Alliance space, human soldiers and engineers were thrust into intensive training programs, racing to absorb centuries of advanced knowledge. They learned the principles of plasma weaponry and inertial dampening, of quantum computing and nanorobotics. But even as they learned, the humans began to tinker and modify. This type of couch energy flow was more efficient. Oh, you could fit twice as many railgun rounds in a standard clip if you used this material. An oversized armored torso, sure, but why not add jump jets for mobility? The Alliance commanders watched with a mix of fascination and trepidation. These humans were either mad or brilliant, perhaps both. As the first joint human alliance strike forces shipped out to face the Zephyr, Admiral Vex stood on the observation deck of his flagship, gazing out at the stars. The path ahead was uncertain, the risks immense. But for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, these audacious humans were exactly what the galaxy needed. A spark of mad brilliance in the face of an implacable foe. The war was about to change. The galaxy would never be the same. Humans adapt and innovate. In the depths of Alliance space, on a rugged moon orbiting a dying star, a secret training facility hummed with activity. Here, hundreds of human soldiers and engineers worked alongside their Alliance counterparts, racing to bridge the technological gap between their civilizations. Sergeant Lena Kovac, a wiry woman with close-cropped hair and intense green eyes, stood in the center of a holographic simulation chamber. Around her, the air shimmered as an artificial battlefield took shape, the jagged spires of a Zephyr fortress, bristling with plasma cannons. An Alliance instructor, a tall reptilian saurian named Zix, stood nearby, his scaled brow furrowed. Your objective is to breach the fortress and disable its power core. Remember, the Zephyr defenses are designed to counter standard Alliance tactics. You must adapt and innovate. Lena nodded, her jaw set with determination. She signaled to her squad, a mix of humans and Alliance soldiers. They took up positions, checking their weapons and gear. Then, with a fierce battle cry, Lena led the charge. The simulated Zephyr defenses opened fire, filling the air with sizzling bolts of plasma. But the human soldiers didn't follow the expected approach vectors. Instead, they used their compact, maneuverable frames to weave and dodge, finding cover in the smallest of crevices. Lena herself bounded up the sheer fortress wall, using a prototype grappling device of her own design. In seconds, she was over the ramparts, sowing chaos and confusion in the Zephyr ranks. Her squad followed close behind, some using modified jump jets to leap over obstacles, others deploying swarms of tiny drones to overwhelm Zephyr sensors. In a matter of minutes, it was over. The power core lay in ruins, the simulated fortress in Alliance hands. Zix stood slack-jawed, amazed at the unorthodox display. In all my years, I've never seen tactics like that. Lena grinned, wiping sweat from her brow. On Earth, we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When the odds are stacked against us, we get creative. Scenes like this played out across the training facility, and dozens of others like it. Human ingenuity, forged in a crucible of constant adaptation and adversity on Earth, now turned its full force to the problems of interstellar warfare. In the engineering bays, human and Alliance scientists pored over schematics and prototypes. A human engineer named Kai Nakamura held up a new type of power cell, compact yet astonishingly efficient. By layering the anode with graphene nanostructures, we can triple the energy density while reducing waste heat, he explained to his Alliance counterpart, a crystalline Novian named Chime. Imagine the applications: longer-range fighter craft, more powerful weapon systems. Chime trilled in excitement, her faceted eyes sparkling. Your people have a remarkable way of looking at problems from new angles. It's refreshing. Word of the humans' unorthodox approaches began to spread through the Alliance command structure. Some viewed it with skepticism, even alarm. The established doctrines of warfare, honed over centuries, were not easily set aside. But others, like Admiral Vex, saw potential. He authorized the formation of experimental strike teams, combining the best of human innovation with Alliance technology. One such team, led by Lena and Kai, found themselves deployed to a remote Zephyr outpost, a key resupply point for their frontline forces. As their stealth dropship approached the outpost, Lena reviewed the plan one last time. Remember, the Zephyr will be expecting a frontal assault, or a bombing run. They won't be ready for this. With a roar of thrusters, the dropship released a swarm of drones, each no larger than a human hand. The drones streaked towards the outpost, hugging the contours of the land to avoid detection. As they neared the base's perimeter, the drones began to broadcast a complex array of signals, jamming and misleading Zephyr sensors. To the outpost's defenders, it appeared as though an entire Alliance fleet was descending upon them. In the confusion, Lena and her team struck. They emerged from hidden tunnel entrances beneath the outpost, planted weeks earlier by infiltration bots. With swift, precise strikes, they disabled critical systems and secured key objectives. By the time the Zephyr realized the deception, it was too late. The outpost fell, a crucial link in their supply chain severed. News of the victory spread like wildfire through the Alliance. For the first time in generations, the tide of the war seemed to be turning. In the Grand Council chamber, Admiral Vex stood before the assembled leaders once more. "The humans have shown us the way," he declared. "By adapting our strategies and embracing innovation, we can do more than just survive against the Zephyr. We can win." A cheer went up from the council, a sound of hope reborn. But deep in Zephyr space, in the dark heart of their empire, other eyes were watching. The Zephyr leadership, ruthless and calculating, saw the shift in the war's balance, and they began to plan their response. The true test, for both the Alliance and their new human allies, was yet to come. Turning the tide with human ingenuity. In a sprawling research complex on the Alliance capital world of Nexus Prime, a team of human and Alliance scientists worked feverishly. At the center of their efforts was a revolutionary new propulsion system, one that promised to change the face of galactic warfare. Dr. Ilara Vestri, a brilliant human physicist, stood before a holographic schematic, her eyes alight with excitement. "By harnessing the power of artificial microsingularities, we can achieve speeds and maneuverability that were once thought impossible." Her Alliance counterpart, a towering Arcturian named Zoltar, nodded in agreement. "Your grasp of advanced quantum field manipulation is astonishing. This technology could give our ships an overwhelming advantage against the Zephyr." Word of the breakthrough spread quickly, and soon human-designed singularity drives were being retrofitted onto Alliance warships. The results were staggering. In a daring raid deep into Zephyr territory, a squadron of singularity-enhanced fighters, piloted by mixed human and Alliance crews, struck at a heavily defended shipyard. The Zephyr defenses, calibrated to counter traditional Alliance tactics, were caught completely off guard by the speed and agility of the attackers. Plasma bolts and missiles streaked through space, but the nimble fighters dodged and weaved, dancing around the lumbering Zephyr ships. In a matter of minutes, the shipyard was reduced to a field of debris, a devastating blow to the Zephyr war machine. Similar scenes played out across the front lines. Human innovations, paired with Alliance resources, began to shift the balance of power. In the heart of Zephyr space, the ruling council convened in a dark, cavernous chamber. At the head of the table sat Emperor Zalmoth, his chidnous exoskeleton gleaming in the dim light. "These humans," he hissed, his mandibles clicking with agitation. "They fight like no species we have encountered before. Their tactics are chaotic, unpredictable." His advisors shuffled nervously, none daring to speak. Finally, one raised a segmented limb. "Your Majesty, our spies report that the humans are also making great strides in stealth technology. Our sensors are having increasing difficulty tracking their ships." Emperor Zalmoth slammed a clawed fist on the table, leaving deep gouges in the obsidian surface. "Unacceptable. We must crush this upstart species before they become a true threat to our dominion." Orders were dispatched, and the Zephyr began to mobilize their reserves, preparing for a massive counterattack. But the humans and their Alliance allies were not idle. On a remote, uninhabited planet, a team of human special forces prepared for a mission that could change the course of the war. Captain Jake Riker, a grizzled veteran of Earth's own wars, checked his gear one last time. His team, all handpicked for their skills and adaptability, did the same. Their target was a key Zephyr communications hub, a heavily fortified installation that coordinated the Empire's military operations across a dozen sectors. If they could take it out, it would throw the Zephyr into disarray, buying precious time for the Alliance. As they boarded their stealthed insertion craft, Riker reflected on how far humanity had come. From the brink of interstellar war to the forefront of a galactic conflict, they had adapted and risen to challenges that would have seemed insurmountable just a few short years ago. The insertion went smoothly, the human stealth tech rendering them all but invisible to the Zephyr sensors. They infiltrated the base, planting explosives at key structural points. But as they were about to make their escape, alarms blared throughout the facility. They had been discovered. Zephyr soldiers, their exoskeletons bristling with weapons, flooded into the corridors. Riker and his team fought with a ferocity and skill that belied their primitive origins, their advanced Alliance weaponry cutting through the Zephyr like a scythe. Yet for every Zephyr soldier that fell, two more seemed to take their place. The humans were being pushed back, the window for their escape rapidly closing. Riker made a split-second decision. He ordered his team to fall back to the insertion craft, while he stayed behind to hold off the Zephyr and ensure the charges detonated. It was a sacrifice, but one he made willingly. For the sake of his team, for the Alliance, for all of humanity. As the insertion craft streaked away, explosions rumbled in the distance. The communications hub was no more, and with it, a significant part of the Zephyr's ability to coordinate their forces. News of the victory and of Riker's heroic stand spread across the galaxy. For the Alliance, it was a much-needed boost to morale. For the humans, it was a sobering reminder of the costs of war. And for the Zephyr, it was a warning. The upstart species from Earth, once considered primitive and beneath notice, had become a force to be reckoned with. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The Zephyr Empire, proud and unyielding, prepared to strike back with all its might. But the Alliance and their human allies stood ready, united in their determination to defend their freedom and their way of life. The greatest battles were yet to come. The Zephyr Empire strikes back. The Zephyr counterattack, when it came, was swift and brutal. Across a dozen systems, their fleets surged forward, smashing through Alliance defenses with a ferocity born of wounded pride and desperation. Leading the charge were new Zephyr war machines, towering mechs bristling with advanced weaponry. These behemoths, twice the size of any Alliance fighter, tore through ship formations like a hurricane, their armor shrugging off all but the heaviest of shots. On the bridge of the Alliance flagship, the dauntless Admiral Vex gripped the edge of the command console, his knuckles pale. On the view screen before him, the tactical display was a sea of red, Zephyr forces advancing on all fronts. "Our lines are collapsing," reported his tactical officer, a note of panic in her voice. "The Zephyr mechs are unlike anything we've faced before." Vex's mind raced, searching for a solution. The Zephyr had clearly been developing these new weapons in secret, a technological ace up their sleeve. He turned to his communications officer. "Get me Kai Nakamura and his engineering team. We need a miracle, and fast." In the depths of the Dauntless's engineering bay, Kai pored over the scant data they had managed to gather on the Zephyr mechs. His face was drawn, the strain of countless sleepless nights etched into his features. "The mech's armor is some kind of advanced nanocomposite," he muttered, half to himself. "It's adapting to our weapons, hardening at the point of impact." His human compatriot, Dr. Ilara Vestri, looked up from her own console. "What if we could disrupt the nanites' communication? Introduce a virus into their control system?" Kai's eyes widened. That might work. But we'd need to get close, very close, to transmit the virus." A grim smile crossed Ilara's face. "Leave that to me." As the Zephyr advance continued, the Alliance fell back, trading space for time. Human strike teams, led by veterans like Lena Kovic, launched daring raids behind enemy lines, striking at supply depots and communications hubs. But it was a losing battle. For every small victory, the Zephyr claimed a dozen more. Entire systems fell under their control, their populations subjected to the brutal rule of the Empire. On the occupied world of Sirius IV, a human resistance cell fought a desperate guerrilla war against their Zephyr oppressors. Led by a former Alliance Marine named Jace Rogan, they staged hit-and-run attacks, sabotaging Zephyr infrastructure and stealing supplies to keep the populace alive. But with each passing day, their numbers dwindled, whittled down by the relentless Zephyr pursuit. Jace, his face gaunt and his eyes haunted, knew they could not hold out much longer. Yet still they fought, driven by a fierce determination not to let their world, their people, fall completely under the heel of the Zephyr. They were humans, and they would not go quietly into the night. As the war raged on, the strain began to show on the Alliance. Supplies ran low, and whispers of discontent began to spread. Some began to question the wisdom of allying with the humans, blaming them for the escalation of the conflict. In the Grand Council chamber, heated debates erupted. Representatives of worlds that had fallen to the Zephyr demanded more protection, more resources. Others argued for a negotiated peace, a surrender on terms. Through it all, Admiral Vex fought to hold the Alliance together. "We cannot falter now," he implored. "The humans have given us a chance, a hope we didn't have before. We must stand with them." But even as he spoke, he could feel the tide turning against him. The Zephyr Empire, sensing weakness, redoubled their efforts, their mechs leading the charge in a final, all-out offensive. On the front lines, human and Alliance ships fought side by side, a valiant last stand against the encroaching darkness. In the thick of the battle, Lena Kovic weaved her fighter through a swarm of Zephyr drones, her face set in a mask of grim determination. Over the comm, Kai's voice crackled with static. "The virus is ready, but you'll need to get within 100 meters of the lead mech to transmit it." Lena's grip tightened on the control yoke. 100 meters. Suicide range. But what choice did they have? The Zephyr had to be stopped, whatever the cost. She thought of her homeworld, of the billions of humans who were counting on her, on all of them. She thought of the brave men and women she'd fought beside, human and Alliance alike. She would not let their sacrifices be in vain. With a wordless battle cry, she gunned her engines and charged headlong into the fray, straight for the towering form of the Lid Zephyr mech. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the courage of one human pilot might just be the tipping point. But the final outcome, the ultimate fate of the Alliance and the Zephyr Empire, was yet to be written. Humanity's desperate ploy. In the heart of Alliance space, on the capital world of Nexus Prime, an emergency meeting of the Alliance Council was underway. The mood was grim, the air thick with tension and despair. Admiral Vex stood before the assembled leaders, his face lined with exhaustion. "The Zephyr advance continues unabated," he said, his voice heavy. "Our fleets are in disarray, our worlds falling one by one. We are losing this war." Silence fell over the chamber, a palpable weight pressing down on all present. It was a truth they had all known, but to hear it spoken aloud was another matter entirely. Then, from the human delegation, a figure stood. It was Dr. Ilara Vestri, her eyes alight with a fierce determination. "We cannot give up," she said, her voice ringing clear. "Not now, not ever. We have one last chance, one final gambit that could turn the tide." All eyes turned to her, a mix of hope and skepticism on the faces of the assembled leaders. Ilara activated the central holodisplay, a glowing schematic of a Zephyr mech spinning into view. "We have developed a virus that can disable the Zephyr's new weapons," she explained. "But to deploy it, we need to infiltrate their central command network." A murmur of disbelief ran through the chamber. The Zephyr's command network was the most heavily defended system in the galaxy, a veritable fortress of firewalls and countermeasures. "It's impossible," scoffed a Saurian delegate. "No one has ever breached the Zephyr's cyber defenses." A small smile played across Ilara's lips. "No one. Until now." The display shifted, revealing a complex web of nodes and connections. "For the past month, a team of our best programmers and AI specialists have been working in secret, developing a new kind of infiltration software, a swarm of intelligent, adaptive algorithms capable of evolving and replicating inside the Zephyr network." She paused, letting the implications sink in. Once inside, they will spread like a virus, seeking out and compromising key systems. The Zephyr will be fighting a battle on two fronts, one in space and one within their own network. Admiral Vex leaned forward, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "How soon can this swarm be deployed?" "It's ready now," Ilara replied. "But there's a catch. To introduce the swarm into the Zephyr network, We need direct access to one of their command nodes, and the nearest one is deep within their territory, heavily guarded. A heavy silence fell. They all knew what that meant. It would take a fleet to break through the Zephyr lines, to get close enough to the command node, a fleet they couldn't spare, not with the Zephyr pressing the attack on all fronts. But then, a voice spoke up from the back of the chamber. There is another way. All heads turned. It was Jace Rogan, leader of the Sirius IV resistance. He stood tall despite the wear and tear evident on his features, a fierce light in his eyes. The Sirius system, he said, was once a hub of the old human interstellar network, before the Alliance found us. There are ancient warp gates there, from the early days of our space exploration. With a bit of luck, and a lot of guts, a small ship could use those gates to jump directly into Zephyr space, bypassing their lines entirely. A ripple of excitement mixed with trepidation ran through the chamber. It was a daring plan, audacious in its simplicity. Admiral Vex turned to Jace, a newfound respect in his gaze. Your ships are barely spaceworthy, and those warp gates haven't been used in centuries. The risks, Jace met his gaze unflinchingly, are worth it, if it means a chance to save our worlds, our people. We're humans, Admiral. We don't back down from a fight, no matter the odds. In that moment, a decision was made. The Alliance would mount a last, desperate offensive, a diversion to draw the Zephyr fleets away from their command node. And a small, brave band of humans would take the fight directly to the heart of the enemy, armed with nothing but their wits, their courage, and a digital weapon unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The pieces were in motion, the final gambit laid bare. The fate of worlds, of entire civilizations, would be decided in the coming hours. In the depths of space, Lena Kovic prepared her fighter wing for what might well be their final mission. In the halls of power on Nexus Prime, Admiral Vex rallied what remained of the Alliance fleets, and in the ancient battered hulls of the Sirius workships, Jace Rogan and his band of resistance fighters prepared to embark on a journey from which they might never return. The endgame had begun, and the stakes could not be higher. The next moves would decide the fate of the galaxy itself. The galaxy remade. The ancient warp gates of Sirius flared to life, eldritch energies swirling in their depths. Through this maelstrom flew a small battered fleet, the last hope of the Alliance and all free peoples of the galaxy. At the helm of the lead ship stood Jace Rogan, his face set in grim determination. Around him, his crew, a ragtag band of human resistance fighters and Alliance volunteers, worked frantically at their stations, coaxing every last ounce of power from the dilapidated systems. Transition in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The ship shuddered as it was flung across the vast light years, the fabric of space-time itself bending to the will of the ancient human technology. And then, suddenly, they were through. The twisted purple-black of Zephyr space yawned before them, the malevolent crimson glare of the Zephyr home star filling the viewports. "Stealth systems engage," reported the navigator, a young human woman named Asha. "We're running silent. The Zephyr don't know we're here. Yet." Jace nodded, his eyes fixed on the readouts scrolling across the main display. "There," he said, pointing to a massive structure orbiting the Zephyr homeworld. "The central command node. That's our target." The plan was audacious in its simplicity. While the main Alliance fleet engaged the Zephyr in a desperate bid to draw their forces away, Jace's team would infiltrate the command node and upload the virus Ilara had developed directly into the heart of the Zephyr network. If they succeeded, the Zephyr mechs would be crippled, their fleets thrown into disarray. It would be the turning point the Alliance so desperately needed. If they failed, well, failure was not an option. As they approached the command node, the ship's sensors lit up with warning signs. "We've been detected," Asha reported, her voice tense. "Zephyr fighters, incoming." Jace gritted his teeth. "Evasive maneuvers. Get us as close as you can." The ship jinked and dived, weaving through a hail of plasma fire. The hull groaned under the stress, the ancient metal straining to hold together. In the back of the ship, in a makeshift hangar bay, Lena Kovac and her fighter wing prepared for launch. Their mission was to buy time, to keep the Zephyr occupied while Jace's team did their work. "All wings, this is Leader," Lena said over the comm. "We all know what's at stake here. The fate of the galaxy rests on our shoulders. So let's show these Zephyr bastards what humans are made of." With a roar of engines, the fighters launched, streaking out into the void to meet the oncoming Zephyr swarm. In the depths of Zephyr space, far from the raging battle, the virus swarm Ilara had created began its insidious work. It spread through the Zephyr network like a plague, subverting systems, rewriting code, sowing chaos and confusion. Zephyr commanders found their orders contradicted, their communications garbled. Mech pilots suddenly lost control, their war machines turning on each other in an orgy of destruction. And at the heart of it all, in the central command node, Jace and his team fought their way through the corridors, uploading the master virus into the core systems. It was a battle fought on two fronts, in the cold void of space and in the searing digital realm of code and algorithm. And in both, the tide was turning. The Zephyr fleets, once an unstoppable juggernaut, found themselves fractured and confused, their greatest weapons turned against them. The Alliance, battered but unbroken, seized the opportunity, driving forward in a united push. And then, in a final, desperate gambit, the Zephyr Emperor Zalmoth himself took to the field in his personal command mech, a towering monstrosity bristling with weapons. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Admiral Vex watched the behemoth approach, a sense of calm settling over him. "This is it," he said softly, "the moment of truth." He turned to his crew, to the humans and Alliance members standing side by side. "It has been an honor serving with you all. No matter what happens today, know that we fought for something worth fighting for. For freedom, for each other, for the right of all sentient beings to choose their own path." And with that, he gave the order to engage. The battle that followed was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Ships danced and dueled in a ballet of destruction, the fabric of space alight with the fury of their exchange. The battle that followed was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Ships danced and dueled in a ballet of destruction, the fabric of space alight with the fury of their exchange. At the center of it all, Zalmoth's mech and the Dauntless circled each other like ancient leviathans, trading blows that could shatter worlds. But even as they fought, something was happening. Across the battlefield, across the stars themselves, a change was sweeping. The virus swarm, having completed its task, was evolving, transforming. No longer a weapon of destruction, it became a tool of connection, of understanding. It linked the minds of human and Zephyr alike, showing them the folly of their conflict, the potential for something greater. And in that moment of shared epiphany, the fighting ceased. Weapons powered down, ships drifted to a halt. On the battlefield and in the command centers, human and Zephyr alike looked at each other with new eyes. In the heart of his mech, Emperor Zalmoth, the mightiest of the Zephyr, bowed his head. "We have been mistaken," he said, his voice transmitting across the void. "The humans have shown us a new way, a better way. Let us end this conflict and begin anew." And so, in the ashes of war, a new era dawned. The Alliance and the Zephyr, once bitter enemies, came together in a spirit of cooperation and shared purpose. Guided by human ingenuity and Zephyr technical prowess, together they reached heights undreamed of, ushering in a golden age of peace and prosperity for all the peoples of the galaxy. And at the forefront of this brave new era stood the heroes who had made it possible. Admiral Vex, the stalwart leader who had held the Alliance together through its darkest hour. Ilara Vestri, the brilliant scientist whose virus swarm had changed the face of the galaxy. Lena Kovac, the daring pilot who had led the charge in humanity's finest hour. Jace Rogan, the indomitable resistance leader who had never lost faith. Kai Nakamura, the visionary engineer who had turned the tide with his inventions. They were legends now, their names etched into the annals of galactic history. But more than that, they were a symbol of what could be achieved when different peoples, different cultures, came together in a spirit of unity and common purpose. The galaxy had been remade, not by conquest or force of arms, but by the power of an idea, that diversity was strength, that cooperation was the key to a brighter future. And as the stars turned in their courses, as new worlds were discovered and new wonders unveiled, that idea shone as a beacon of hope, a light to guide the way for generations to come.